Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another live episode of The Breakdown. It is February 19th, 2023. We took a little bit of a long weekend in preparation for the long weekend. We took Wednesday off, so we're catching up tonight on all of the things that have been going on in Alberta politics. And Lord knows there is absolutely no short of things that have been going on. We're going to try to make sense of a few of those things, and we're going to do it with a little bit of help from the incomparable Sarah Biggs coming up in just a little bit after we finish up our rundown of some of the, by no means is this a comprehensive list, but some of the events that have started in Alberta politics this week. The first one that we got to talk about, we got another poll that came out here, and a lot of people say, hey, you know what? Polls, they're snapshots in time. And you're absolutely right. But one of the things that politicos tend to look out for is when polls are trending in a particular direction. And when we see polls from different time frames or different snapshots starting to show up with the same kind of results, that's something that people tend to want to pay a little bit more attention to, because it could potentially indicate a bit of a shift in the thinking. Then this new poll came out from Leger this week, and what's particularly interesting is that Rachel Notley and the NDP, by 4%, according to this poll, are ahead. They're winning the popular vote. But when you take a look at what areas that vote is spread out across, there's probably some things that people should be paying attention to. In Calgary, for example, despite the fact that Rachel Notley and the NDP are up in popular vote, the UCP are actually showing at 47% to the NDP's 42%. Now, in Edmonton, which is an NDP stronghold, the numbers are a little bit different. In Edmonton, the NDP, 61% to 32% for the UCP. But then we get other Alberta, which is, people would say rural Alberta. Ralph Klein famously liked to say that Alberta is a three-legged stool, and you can win the election with any of those two legs. Well, the three legs are Calgary, Edmonton, and everywhere else, or as Klein liked to call it, rural Alberta. And in rural Alberta, or third leg, that's where Rachel Notley's NDP is only sitting at 37% compared to Danielle Smith's 53%. Now, it's important to realize that these aren't just the numbers for, do you like Danielle Smith? Do you like Rachel Notley? These are the numbers among decided voters for the person and the party. So this is a particularly interesting poll, and it's a particularly telling poll, because there have been a lot of politicos and pundits over the last couple of weeks, especially, have been raising the alarm about the fact that it seems like the NDP are approaching with this banal sort of milquetoast messaging. They aren't really swinging for the fences. Most of their, hey, we're going to do a thing, you should visit our website, create some barriers for entry for a lot of people. And to be sure, there's a lot of people who still don't know that an election's coming in just a couple of months, hopefully. But it doesn't change the fact that when you compare the incredibly powerful and aggressive messaging that comes from Smith and the UCP with the milquetoast messaging that we've been seeing from the NDP, there's real concerns about whether or not it's compelling enough to A, gain ground, and B, hold ground. And certainly with the recent polling in Calgary, where we're starting to see sort of the hesitant UCP voters move a little bit more back to the UCP as opposed to swinging to the NDP, this is an area where Rachel Notley and the NDP potentially need to look at how they're going to start to speak, especially Calgarian. This is a really important piece, and it's been a fascinating point of conversation. We saw earlier this week, Max Fawcett was on the Ryan Jesperson show, and he said essentially the same thing. And what we've been seeing since then is a lot of people saying, hey, it's time to press the panic button, because we're getting closer and closer. The messaging is not getting any more cohesive. It feels much more thin. It's not focused. Keep asking people to go to this external website instead of with passion and conviction what you're going to do for the province of Alberta. And that's a real problem. But there was a weird, I don't know what the word is here, offensive, hateful little thing that popped through the cracks this week when we saw from the Western Standard, because of course it was the Western Standard. It seems like it's always the Western Standard these days. I could be wrong, but it seems like it's always the Western Standard these days. There was a story that came out of the Western Standard that was published, and the headline was, "Are Albertans ready for Education Minister Janis Irwin?" Now, this story was written by a gentleman named Rahim Mohammed, and the story took on quite an evolution over a couple. Really, it was only about 24, maybe 36 hours at the most, because the story came out, and there were a lot of people who were like, "Whoa, what is this?" Because it seemed like to a lot of people that Mr. Mohammed was trying to tie Janis Irwin to drag shows, and therefore she'd be a terrible minister of education. And he had some pretty pointed remarks. He tried to defend them initially. He put out this tweet where he said, "Never said anything disparaging about Miss Irwin as a person. In fact, I spent the first quarter of the or so of the article kissing her ass." Now, the part of the article that he's referencing, where he says that he's kissing Janis Irwin's ass, "There's perhaps no member of the Alberta NDP caucus who embodies the party's hip, forward-looking progressive brand more than Edmonton Highlands Norwood MLA Janis Irwin, known across the province for her high-wattage smile and wardrobe of natty, well-tailored menswear." Interesting take on ass kissing, but okay. "The 38-year-old Irwin is a natural fit for the image-driven politics of the Instagram age," which some people took as maybe saying, maybe you're calling Janis Irwin a little superficial. "She likewise has a finely tuned known for the progressive virtue signaling that's the sine qua non of today's left. To wit, one would be hard-pressed to find a photo of Ms. Irwin that does not include a pride flag somewhere in its frame. It's far more challenging to find a shot of her posing anywhere in the vicinity of an Alberta flag, but I digress." Now, it's obviously super disingenuous for anyone to say, no, guys, what I was saying nice things. Those were all intended as compliments. And there were a lot of people who were really upset about it, because when it comes to political figures in Alberta's environment, you've got to work pretty hard to find someone who is less offensive than Janis Irwin. It's just really hard to do. She's by many accounts, she's one of the nicest people in Alberta politics. This is something referenced on both sides, but here we have the Western Standard deciding that they're going to, for some reason, go after Janis Irwin on that day. Well, the reason became quite clear shortly after, because Mr. Mohammed released another tweet where he said, "I'd like to apologize unreservedly for both the tone and content of my article. Are Albertans ready for Education Minister Janis Irwin, published yesterday in the Western Standard. In a shameless bid to drive traffic to the website, I knowingly loaded the article with harmful queer transphobic tropes and dog whistles, paying zero mind to the image my words would do to thousands across Alberta and beyond. I've since had a chance to reacquaint myself with the statistics on violence against queer and trans youth, and I'm mortified by my own words. I'll be making a donation to Unison Choruses Canada as a small act of penance. I'll also be taking a break from both commentary and Twitter." So, one of the Western Standard's own writers admits, apparently, that they publish articles with the goal of driving traffic to the website. They don't seem to be concerned about what kind of harm it does before they publish it. It's worth noting, shortly after Mr. Mohammed issued that apology, it was a couple hours, eventually the Western Standard did take down the article. But if you go to the Western Standard website, they've got editors. They've got an editor-in-chief. And if the Western Standard purports to be a legitimate journalistic outlet, one would assume that those editors are at the very least reviewing the articles before they publish them. So there's some ownership there. Or they're not. In which case, they're not at all practicing journalism. They're practicing clickbait infotainment at best. But it also begs the question, if it took Mr. Muhammad catching 24, 36 hours of rightly served outrage from saying that was a garbage article that was full of fallacies that hurt people, that perpetuate harmful stereotypes. He issued his apology. He said he was going to be taking a break, but it took hours before the Western Standard removed it. We talked a little while ago on our episode about True North about the whole idea of journalistic standards and practices and how there are standardized journalistic standards and practices that exist. And anyone who claims to be a journalist should probably be doing their very, very best to follow them. And so it is mind blowing how an article that was not only just logically flawed, like the fact that they tried to connect Janis Irwin and the fact that she has a background in education, she was a teacher, to drag story time. Therefore, as an education minister, if that's what she was appointed as, she would somehow be introducing drag story time to schools, which is just a complete misrepresentation of what's been happening with drag story time in the first place. So there's factual errors there. But the fact that that column not only written, but then published raises some very real concerns about the type of, if any, editorial control or responsibility ethics that's being manifested, let's say, at the Western Standard. The big story of the week, though, Emergency Act came out. There were a couple of different things that came out. There's one that came out earlier in the week, and they talked about the fact that, yeah, it was a violent occupation. That was a grassroots hearing that was done, much like the same grassroots hearing that Mr. Manning, who we're going to talk about, was advocating for before he got his $250,000 payday from Danielle Smith. So one would only think that people would recognize the legitimacy of these grassroots hearings. But the grassroots hearing said, oh, yeah, no, there was violence. Well, the Emergency Act report came out, and the final word is, yep, they were justified. Federal government was absolutely justified in invoking the Emergencies Act to deal with the problems that were happening nationwide, because it's important to remember that as much as the occupation in Ottawa got a lot of the spotlight, here in Alberta, we had our own insurrection with threats and an alleged plot to kill police officers as well. There were others in the country where there were problems too. It didn't take very long for Justice Minister Tyler Shandro to come out with a statement. He was very angry. Alberta's government maintains that the federal government's consultation with provinces was inadequate and that unnecessarily invoking the Emergencies Act set a dangerous precedent. The decision to invoke the act violated the constitutionally guaranteed rights of Albertans and gave the federal government the ability to seize property without due process of law. As a result, the conclusion reached by the inquiry does not affect Alberta's decision to participate in legal challenges initiated against the federal government by the Canadian Constitution Foundation and the Canadian Civil Liberties Association last year. Abhorrent! How dare the federal government just reach into the province's sandbox with no precedent or, I don't know, request? Because for paying attention, you might remember on February 5th, Rick McIver, Minister of Municipal Affairs, letter to the federal government. What did that letter say? Let's take a quick look. The RC, along with local and provincial officials, have been working closely in an attempt to persuade the demonstration participants to remove their vehicles, but have been unsuccessful. In addition, as a result of private industry concerns over negative consequences, the RCMP have been able to secure the appropriate heavy-duty equipment required to remove vehicles and other items such as trailers and tractors from the area. Attempts to procure these services with providers from across the western provinces and the United States have failed. But wait, there's more. In order to ensure a return to free movement of people, vehicles, and goods and services through this pivotal location, we're seeking federal assistance in removing obstructions from the highway. The RCMP and other partner law enforcement agencies will ensure that the locations are secured and will remove demonstrators and bystanders from the area prior to the removal of vehicles, equipment in order to mitigate risks of potential conflict. It goes on To support this approach, I'm requesting federal assistance that includes the provision of equipment and personnel to move approximately 70 semi-tractor trailers and approximately 75 personal and recreational vehicles from the area. It almost sounds like the federal government didn't necessarily need to do a lot of consultation with the provincial government, because the provincial government literally sent them a letter saying, "We are out of our depth. We do not have the manpower or the resources to deal with this problem. Please send help." And to paraphrase, help was on the way. This is more revisionist history from the Smith government and from Mr. Shandro in regards to what happened, how did it happen. One might almost think that they could be trying to spin the narrative a little bit because, I don't know, they had multiple MLAs show up and be a part of these events. Who knows, right? Moving on from there, the big announcement in Calgary, which we were able to talk about on our last show because Danielle Smith totally tipped her hand on it. As much as Edmonton received sheriffs to walk the downtown core with the existing police officers to fight the civil and bad behavior that was going on in the downtown core, despite the fact that the current crime levels, as per a bunch of recent numbers, are actually still not at the highest they've been in the last 5 years, let alone 10 years. There's certainly been some higher profile cases that have happened, and certainly targeted violent crimes have gone up. But the reality is when you take a look at the stats, it's not as bad as it has been historically. Nonetheless, Danielle Smith sent sheriffs into Edmonton. Well, this week, the announcement came, you know what? They're coming to Calgary too. They're going to be deploying sheriffs to supplement the existing policing efforts in Calgary to make sure that this civil unrest gets dealt with. It's fascinating that this comes on the heels of the story in regards to the blockades and the Emergencies Act. Because here we have the provincial government sending in their own shock troops to try to quell the bad behavior that's going on in downtown Calgary. Now, it's worth noting that this is a topic of conversation that, despite the fact that it doesn't necessarily line up with the statistical reality, this is a topic of conversation that Smith and the UCP have been going on about day and night. It's almost as if talking about crime and the horrible impacts of crime drives fear, which in turn drives support. Still not quite done with the whole question of the overreach of things, let's say, because one of the other things that came out of yesterday was Premier Danielle Smith on her radio show was asked some questions about, hey, so gosh, this Jordan Peterson, he keeps saying all these hateful things under the guise of the fact that he's accredited in mental health and he's got all this influence. He's kind of making the profession look bad. He's kind of saying some things that aren't true, that are demonstrably not true, that are demonstrably harmful, and that many people are saying are demonstrably hateful. He's gotten in some trouble. He's had to do some remediation training with his college, is what he's been ordered to do. Now, Mr. Peterson has stomped his feet and had a very big temper tantrum about the fact that he's been told that he has to conduct himself with a minimum standard of professional ethics. But the question came into Danielle Smith, hey, these colleges, they keep making people who are operating under their professional title talking about, in Mr. Peterson's case, mental health impacts directly related to his field of practice. But the college their colleges are trying to tell him what to do. Is that fair? And Danielle Smith's answer was, well, I don't really know. Maybe hard to say. I might have to step in. I might have to do some things because she has some concerns about mission creep, which is the implication that colleges are overstepping their bounds by saying, hey, when you're acting in certain capacities, you have certain responsibilities that you have to fulfill. Now, in particular, one of the things that came up was the Law Society. So she was specifically asked if she thought that the Law Society of Alberta's mandate included social and political re-education. This comes out of the story that we talked about a little while ago, where there was a small group of lawyers that said, hey, we don't think that we should have to do training on the history of Indigenous relations and First Nations relations and the history of how there's a reality of systemic racism and systemic trauma that Indigenous and First Nations people have to navigate. We shouldn't have to be forced to do that program. We're going to call a special meeting. They called the special meeting. Their motion was soundly defeated. But there's some people who are saying, hey, was that an overreach? Should they be mandating that they have to do this training? And Smith said, if we can see emerging issues, then we may have to do something about it. I don't know if it's gotten to that point yet. It would require a lot of consultation. So Smith is saying the door is open. It seems she's saying that the door is open for her to potentially to professional bodies. Here's what you can and can't regulate. Now, it's worth noting that this comes at a time when Minister Shandro just had his hearing for his unprofessional conduct delayed. Even if she doesn't intend to do anything, it's really quite remarkable that the Premier of Alberta would even weigh in with an opinion in regards to whether or not she could or should start to change the mandate of these professional associations and professional colleges. These professions are self-governed. And the reason why there was that special meeting to have a vote as to whether or not that training on Indigenous issues and First Nations issues should be continued was because they're self-governing. They had a vote. As a profession, they made a decision. Because in that profession, the best people who are most qualified to determine how they should be behaving, are the people in the profession. They're the experts. And in fact, one of the questions that often gets asked when a person in a profession is maybe getting in a little bit of trouble is how would any other person who operates in that profession, would they have done the same thing? Would they have found this to be reasonable? That's one of the foundational questions of any self-governed body. But Danielle Smith, who, as we've very clearly learned in the province of Alberta, has no background in law and no understanding of how the law works or how the mechanisms of law work, she wants to say, maybe I'll weigh in. Moving on from there. This is our last one. And then, God willing, we're going to be joined by the incomparable Sarah Biggs. But this one, we got a little bit to unpack here. So, one of the stories that we've been hearing a lot about has had to do with constituency associations and annual general meetings and nomination races. And we've certainly seen some controversial nomination races. There was just the recent one in Leduc-Ponoka where a candidate who allegedly has shared a lot of problematic social media posts that include transphobic and homophobic and all sorts of different things. This person, it has become the nominee for that constituency. We've seen there has been massive takeovers of constituency associations for the UCP across the province, where large groups of people have come in, they filled up the maximum number of board positions in those constituency associations in the hopes of influencing major decisions. Now, like Jason Nixon or not, his constituency association was another one of the areas that was recently targeted, and it was targeted because there were people who wanted to roll back his nomination. Now, the UCP has apparently said there's no mechanism for us to unnominate a nominated candidate. That's not a thing that we can do. They can step down if they want, and there's people speculating that Jason Nixon just might, but there's no mechanism that the constituency association board or the provincial board, despite the fact that it's largely being run by almost half of people from a certain organization we're going to talk about in just a sec, There's no mechanism. They have no legal mechanism within their constitution or bylaws in order to just erase a nomination. So that's a big thing that's been happening. And we saw that play out again with another constituency association meeting. And this one's got a little bit of flavor to it. So in Innisfail, Sylvan Lake, they had their constituency association AGM. And there were a boatload of people that showed up. Danielle Smith showed up. And she tweeted out this picture, among others. You can see it's a packed room. There's a lot of people there. And anybody who's ever been part of a constituency association in Alberta knows that's pretty unprecedented. You don't get turnouts of dozens of people usually at constituency association meetings. You don't get turnouts of hundreds. That's largely completely unprecedented prior to this year. And there's some things that we got to unpack here. But the first thing that we got to unpack is this is Devin Dreeshen's constituency. And that's Danielle Smith speaking on the far left here. She's standing beside a table. What's going on with that table there? Well, as you can see, there's quite the stockpile of liquor that's just sitting there. Now, if it were any other constituency association, if it was any other constituency, if it was any other MLA that Danielle Smith was giving a shout out to, we might be able to walk past this. But given that it's this constituency with this MLA, and we've got bottles of liquor stacked on a table, it's worth doing a little bit of a short history lesson. Because not terribly long ago, there were some problems in that constituency. And in fact, there was a lawsuit that was launched because a former UCP staffer back October of 2021 filed a lawsuit alleging that there's harassment and heavy drinking going on in the multiple ministries. Now, the main minister was being talked about in this was there than Devin Dreeshen. For people who've been following Alberta politics a while, you know that there was a whole thing that went on about how when they decided that they were going to sit down for a drink, they'd make a joke about shields up, close the door, staffers, keep people away. We're getting loaded. I want to highlight the date on that story because that story came out on October 27th, 2021. Right after that story came out, Devin Dreeshen tweeted out this little gem. Wrapped up a great engagement tonight with folks from Central Alberta and Associate Minister Nate Horner on rural economic development. And we got a picture of Devin here, and he's sitting at his desk, and he's got his little, it looks like a Surface maybe. I'm going to call it a Surface. It's a tablet of some kind. And it's sitting on, gosh, what's it sitting on there? Why, it appears to be two coasters. What are the two coasters in the tablet sitting on? Why, it appears to be a styrofoam cooler. But the real piece de resistance with this particular tweet that came out on November 1st. So again, let's be clear. A couple of days before then, story came out about excessive drinking. Devin Dreeshen was named as being, hey, this guy, he's doing a lot of drinking. How does he respond? Posts an unnecessary picture at 9 o'clock at night talking about, I had this great meeting where he's got his laptop propped up on coasters and a cooler. But when you look in the background on the far right, you can see in that little, I don't know, hutch side piece, whatever that would be called, there's bottles of liquor stacked. There's almost no way to look at this tweet as anything other than a very deliberate troll. He was trolling people. Well, didn't take much longer than after that tweet before Mr. Dreeshen had to step down. So just a couple of days later, he resigned from his post following allegations of heavy drinking at work. He stepped down as a minister, remained as an elected MLA, and kind of stayed in the background nice and quiet until Danielle Smith came back. Now she's showing up at a CA and she's bringing multiple bottles of liquor. But here's where we really need to talk a little bit about what's going on, because let's go back to this picture and let's talk about how unprecedented it is to have, I don't know, a conference room. There's hundreds of people there. There's no getting around that. Show up for a constituency association meeting. This doesn't happen. At least it didn't happen until a certain organization showed up and started making their own moves. And that organization we've talked about on the show before, they're called Take Back Alberta. We were sent this screenshot. It's apparently from the internal chat program thinger of the Take Back Alberta folks. And this is where they say another day, another AGM. Proud of the grassroots for getting involved and making their voices heard. Also, thank you to Devin Dreeshen for reaching out to the grassroots, coming to meetings, and being open to democracy. It really is incredible to see the success that Take Back Alberta is having across the province. We now have TBA members on half of the CA boards in this province. I've seen amazing success from Bonnyville to Milk River. Thank you, everyone, for keeping the momentum going. Together, we will show all of Canada what real democracy looks like, and then goes on to say some other things. Take Back Alberta has been moving in the background for a while now. They're an organization that was ostensibly put together by a guy named David Parker, but when you start to peel back the leaves, it actually goes back to British Columbia, of all places. So grassroots, do with that what you will. But they are starting to be able to exert some real influence. Anyone who paid attention to the UCP leadership race knows Take Back Alberta took some victory laps over the role that they claim they played in getting Danielle Smith elected. This is a group that talks about vaccine conspiracy theories. This is a group that talks about the WEF as a conspiracy theory. This is a group that panders to the far right of the far right. And if they're to be believed, they're the ones who are responsible for filling that room. They're the ones for putting the premier, the person who's currently sitting in the premier's chair in Alberta, in premier's chair. They're making no bones about the fact that they have decided that they're going to effectively take over the UCP as a party. And it's not the progressive conservative side of the UCP. It is the wild rose of the wild rose. That's who Take Back Alberta is. And they are a hair's breadth away from taking a controlling interest in most of the levers of power that decide who MLAs are going to be. Because the reality is, these decisions are made at the constituency level. We've seen that time and time again. Once somebody gets nominated for a party, there's very little that you can do. And so when we take a look even at the recent nomination race that just went down on Friday, where by some reports, 2/3 of the vote, and there have been, I'll say allegedly, some maybe some voting irregularities, some questionable voting activities that went on there. But nonetheless, 2/3 of the people voted for the far right TBA candidate who has put out transphobic, homophobic, WEF conspiracy theories across their social media. This is why it gets to be so important that people get involved in politics at the grassroots level. Because if you don't, if we've learned nothing else from this little conversation, there are folks who will. And they certainly, while they claim to represent the grassroots, they certainly don't seem to represent the perspectives or the beliefs of the majority of Albertans, but they're moving people into positions of power where it isn't going to matter. We got one more before we bring Sarah Biggs into the room. Preston Mannings' panel was announced. Unsurprisingly, there's some familiar names. Retired Justice of the Supreme Court, John brackets Jack C. Major. He's one of the people who wrote an op-ed endorsing Danielle Smith's Sovereignty Act. We've got Dr. Rob Tanguay, who is heavily involved in not only the supervised consumption site review panel that saw The busiest supervised consumption site in Alberta shut down over false allegations. And they had the very nice creme brulee, we're told. He was also involved with the safe supply panel that was deemed to be so biased and so scientifically flawed that not only did the NDP say, we don't want to have anything to do with this train wreck, but multiple experts from across the field said, we don't want to have anything to do with this train wreck. And that report, when it came out, was panned, was condemned by people across the board because of how biased, misinformed, flawed it was. But then we've got the last name. So let's just take a sec to remember. Preston Mannings' panel was convened ostensibly to do a legislative review of the laws that exist that allowed the tragic violation of freedom that occurred during the pandemic, which is still, I'm being so sarcastic. There were no tragic violations of freedom. We did barely the bare minimum in order to keep our healthcare system from being overwhelmed. And there were a lot of people who approached that with the same maturity of a toddler being told that it's bedtime. But this is what the panel has been commissioned to do, to take a look at what are the legislative changes that we maybe should make. What did Alberta Health Services get wrong? And it's important to remember, Danielle Smith fired the AHS board and put in her own little doctor in order, or in response to the horrible job that AHS did managing the pandemic, based on things that that we've demonstrated over and over again are just lies. They're false. The things that Danielle Smith has said to justify firing the AHS board are lies and false. She misrepresented the idea of surge capacity. She claimed that the AHS board had been instructed to create thousands of ICU beds and have them staffed and ready, even though ICU capacity was never exceeded. It would have been a tremendous waste of money, and that's not what surge capacity is. But rather than Danielle Smith admit that she doesn't know what surge capacity actually is, she decided, now, you know what? I'm going to fire the AHS board. Well, one of the people that she brought in is none other than one of the people who was fired from the AHS board, Jack Mintz. Now, Jack Mintz, dude gets around. So from the own government bio, he chaired the Alberta Premier's Economic Recovery Council. He's a former board member of Alberta Health Services, only because Danielle Smith fired him, and Imperial Oil Limited. Jack Mintz, you can't find something that Conservatives have done over the last, 5 years in this province without finding the name Jack Mintz. Already the panel has been viewed by legal experts, legal scholars, constitutional scholars as being farcical. It's the worst version of a UCP panel that was commissioned to come to a foregone conclusion. Now, it's worth remembering, we got us 5 new panel members. We got us a Preston Manning. We got a lot of people involved here. We know Preston Manning's getting paid $250,000. The panel has a $2 million budget. There's 5 people on the panel. You can go ahead and do the math. And with that, we're going to bring in none other than Sarah Biggs. Sarah, how are you doing tonight? Or are you muted again?
Hi.
There you go.
Hi.
It's that button right at the beginning. We got to get like a flash for you or something. Well, how's it going?
What's that? Sorry, it cut off. It's terrible outside, so the internet is garbage.
That's fair. We do have some weather in Calgary right now. How are you doing?
I'm okay. Tired.
Doing good?
It's been a busy weekend. Walter's home. Palliative care. We'll make him comfy. That's all.
For anybody who's not familiar, Walter is a ornery little dog who's had a bit of a week.
Yeah, he's Yeah, it's been last night was quite scary, but Walter's 14, still dashing. Yeah, so he had meatballs tonight, so we're giving him, like a good little palliative care.
Were they
Lots of
IKEA
snuff.
meatballs?
What's that?
Were they IKEA meatballs, or did you go with like the fancy stuff?
No, homemade.
Nothing but the best.
And oh, see, he's at the door right now, but he's dizzy. He's stumbling.
A
He
little
had
wobbly.
well, yeah, they think it's a brain bleed, so his neurologic symptoms are not going away. So, but anyways, enough about that. I love my Walter so much.
We might as well just start setting the tone positive from the get go. Let's start with this new Leger poll because, I mean, again, and I talked at the beginning of the show, polls are a snapshot, but one of the things that politicos do look for is whether or not there's a trend that's associated with those polls. And this is not the first poll that we've seen where the NDP have gone from having a major advantage over the UCP, especially in Calgary, to not having any advantage at all, and in fact being down 5 points. What's going on here? Why is this happening?
What have we been talking for? How long now, Nate? And nobody's listening? Their goddamn messaging. They need to wake up. Like, stop telling. So, okay, so they had a policy coming out last week. Applause. But they're not willing to tackle down the root cause of a lot of issues that we're having in the province. They need to go bold. They don't have anything to lose. They're already in a position. Do they want to stay there, or do they want to go bold and make, propose policies that would make sense and individuals would get on with? Subsidized. Everything starts at the education level. Oddly enough, they started caring about the teachers like a week and a half ago, which is quite surprising. But subsidized universities, man. No teenager that applies in university should have 95% average in order to get into nursing program, because the spaces are so limited. Everything is just, there's not enough spaces. Same thing with doctors. So they're going to have all those wonderful teams, full round of teams, but where are they going to take the people? You need more individuals into the system. So how do you fix that? So we're having an affordability crisis right now. What would help students? I'm really wondering what helps students. Subsidize some programs, subsidize them all. I don't care. Address the root cause, open up more spaces, fund universities, because they're announcing all that beautiful funding, but universities' budget have been cut drastically in the past few years. And no one is willing to address this is the biggest elephant in the room. Because going to university is now a thing of the elite. And it is extremely, extremely unfortunate that a student wants to become a teacher, needs to go 40,000 lower in debt. Doesn't make any sense. They're going to go serve the province. They are going to go teach our kids. They are getting the future and future workers, the worker ready for the market. Do something. Stop poking at the pile, and either party show real meaningful actions to try to address this. You can throw as much money as you want. You can reform as much money as you want. You can say, oh yeah, we're going to be getting more nurses from here and there. But here's the thing, there's a global shortage of healthcare workers. Why is that being ignored is something that I do not understand. And it is extremely, extremely tone deaf coming from the NDP right now. And they need to wake up, because they're missing the mark right now. Like, look at what's, so Danielle had a video. When was it? Thursday, Nate? Was it Thursday? I think it was Thursday.
I think
She
it
had
was.
a
I
video
think it might have actually come out on Friday. To be honest with you.
Friday. I don't know. I've
Yeah.
just been so busy. I don't know anymore. I was on the road all week. It's just been a big blur. But it was a really well-made video. And then the NDP comes back with a rebuttal, and it's the dollar store version of what he should have put out. But the NDP needs to stop being so reactive. They need to start being proactive, and they need to take the lead. If they do not take the lead on the fiscal side, on the healthcare side, and education side, they're hooped. They need to stop with Rachel will fix healthcare. Guess what? She won't, because staff shortages are systemic issues. It doesn't matter what you say or do right now. If she's ignoring the root cause, she's not going to fix it, and people need to understand that. Look at what's going on in rural Alberta right now. You can reform the hell out of everything as much as you want. People don't have hospitals to go to, Rachel. Where are you going to pull your worker from, Rachel? Please show me the full plan. Are you going to increase spaces in medicine school? Are you going to increase spaces in nursing schools? Are you going to be funding that education? Because let me tell you, not everybody can afford a semester at $7,500 a semester right now. Plus on top of high cost of food, on cost of it. I can't even, people need to wake up.
So here's my question, because this is one of the things that I've been sort of noticing in regards to the messaging. It seems like, and I've been trying to put my finger on why I can't get behind the stuff that the NDP are putting out, because it's all very, we're going to talk in a very calm voice, and we're going to tell you that Danielle Smith is bad for you.
It's time to scorch earth right now. Put
Well, this is my
salt in the
question.
water, scorch earth.
This is my
And
question.
this election is not about Rachel. It's about Albertans. Stop that shit. She's the leader. That's fine. Everybody knows it. But the election is not about Rachel going for a run with Joe. The election is about Albertans that does not have access to proper education system, facing underfunding universities. You cannot have access to proper healthcare. And therefore, there's more taxpayer money being spent on ridiculous shit, because they think, like, nobody's thinking. The rationale is gone. I'm gonna get blocked tonight. Sorry. I'm just.
Here's the thing that I've been trying to figure out, because I've been watching it, and it seems like the NDP are trying to kind of sort of go after Danielle Smith, but they're not really committing. Whereas you take a look at how Danielle Smith and the UCP are running the show, they've got enemies, and they want you to know that they've got enemies. There's the Rachel Notley, Jagmeet Singh, Justin Trudeau alliance, and they're going to destroy Alberta, and they're going to destroy the country, and we have to stand up and fight back against them, because they're just the absolute worst. And they're playing on people's fears, and it's a powerful motivator from a communication standpoint. Fear gets people fired up. We talked about the TBA. Yeah, we're going to get to that in a sec. But TBA is using all of the conspiracy theories and all of the fears to get people fired up and show up. We're not seeing that same sort of.
There's no passion. There's no passion. When Danielle released her video on Friday, I sent it to a few people. Some, dippers, or, more centrist, and they were like, oh, that's good. Oh, that's really good. And the thing, she's like, yeah, Rachel and I agree on a lot of things, but here's where we disagree. She didn't destroy her. She went on and explained the difference between her and Danielle. And then we get that video with almost the same music from Rachel sitting on the chair on the fly, like done very, very quickly. But the thing is that when you have Max Fawcett saying that the NDP needs to wake up, when you have Max Fawcett dunking on them and telling them that they need to wake up, if not they are done, it's because things are not going that well. Like, I don't know what to say anymore. They just need to get their head out of the sand. I'm going to
It
be
seems like to me that one of the flaws is potentially that I mean, I was taking a look at some of the recent tweets, and they're very clearly written for like a grade 4 reading level. We've got 5-word sentences. They're all like mono or dual syllabic. Like we're not being aspirational at all with our language whatsoever. But Daniel Smith is able to occupy 2 different spaces. Daniel Smith has figured out that more than one thing can be true or maybe a lie at the same time, because she's able to, on one hand, go after the Notley Singh Trudeau master plan organized by the WEF and everything. She's able to go all fire and brimstone. But at the same time, she's also able to do the, hey guys, you know what? Like, I think that, there's some things that Rachel Notley and I do agree on. I just disagree with everything that she is. So it's not so much that we don't agree. It's that she's the devil, but she's able to do it in a very, very calm and reassuring voice. This is what I'm saying. We haven't seen that kind of messaging from the NDP. The NDP is doing like that. Hey, buds, I've been trying to put my finger on the feeling that I get from the NDP communication so far, and it comes down to, in a lot of ways, for me, that meme where Steve Buscemi comes around the corner with the skateboard. And he's like, "Hey, you kids, what are we doing in school today?" Like it feels like that. He's an actor. It was I believe it was a
Sorry, my mother was not making me watch movies when I was a kid, so my husband always makes fun of me because he says that I'm uneducated on the movie level. But that's okay. I know Forrest Gump by heart. But no, it's like if they're dealing with the Eeyore syndrome right now. Do they need Zoloft? Do they need, what do they need here to get pep in their step? It's really frustrating because it's almost if they're just sitting back and really, really hoping for the CBC to do the job for them. That's lazy. They have money, spend it accordingly, build meaningful events, build meaningful gatherings. Yeah.
Okay, so here's my thing. One of the big lessons that has to have come out of 2019 in particular, but certainly over the last couple of years, and it's certainly something that we've seen Daniel Smith embrace, is the idea that, you know what, you can manufacture your own media narrative. They do a very, very good job of not only saying the things that they want to say, but they say them to the outlets that have been, some people say, generated and manufactured to serve as propaganda wings. I mean, we certainly saw, I talked about the grotesque story that was written in the Western Standard this week, which was nothing more than an ugly, ugly hit piece on Janis Irwin. It was published.
He was not like that.
He wrote it.
He did.
I don't know what to tell you, man.
No, I know. I'm just like in shock.
Well, but the Western Standard published that despite having an editor, and they did it because, through the author's own admission, it would drive website traffic. It would. I want to make sure that I don't paraphrase this wrong because I got enough problems.
No, that's okay. I'm insured.
Well, you're insured, but I'm not. So a shameless bid to drive traffic to the website. He knowingly loaded the article with harmful transphobic tropes and dog whistles, paying zero mind to the damage his words would do to thousands across Alberta and beyond. It was published with that in mind. It was published to drive traffic. It was published to push a very specific narrative and inflame people.
It wasn't clickbait.
Absolutely. But that's what these organizations do. And you take a look at who Danielle Smith sidles up to. She sidles up to the Western Standard. She sidles up to True North. Those are media organizations. I wouldn't call them journalists on my darkest day, but those are media organizations that exist to propagate that narrative, to get people fired up. And then Daniel Smith and the UCP come in and capitalize on that. Whether or not there's any sort of collaboration, who knows? But that's how that relationship works. There's nothing for the NDP in that. So if they don't, like, they don't have an equivalent. There's no equivalent for the NDP of the Western Standard. There's equivalent for the NDP.
But it's not big enough. But here's what I'm going to say.
Progress Alberta, but I wouldn't go Press Progress.
But here's what I'm going to say. But everything that we are seeing with Take Back Alberta and everything I've been talking about, we saw pictures this week of a assembly, and I called you and I said that scares the fuck out of me, saying that amount of people. No, that's Dressen's. No, the other one I sent you earlier this week.
Another one? I thought that was the one you sent me.
No. I'll send it to you again.
It's all the old people with white hair. I just get lost.
Yeah, they all look the same, right? I'm gonna send it to you right now. Sorry, I'm just on my phone. But here's the thing: the NDP will be held. So the NDP needs to wake up. The NDP needs to figure out their shit extremely fast. Because right now, the way they are acting and the way they are dealing with things is not appropriate. This is not a regular campaign. This is not a normal electoral cycle. This is nothing is normal in this. Nothing is normal. Here, I'm sending it to you again.
I'll see if I can do up a little graphic during your next rant.
So no, it's very, very, very concerning, because it's like if the NDP's just
that was the Dresden one.
Sitting there.
That's the Dresden one.
Was not. Is it?
Yeah. That's why it's just thanks to Devin Dresden.
Oh God.
They are the same old white-haired people. Don't mess with. I'm covered.
No, I got progressives. Oh shit. Never mind. Sorry, guys. It's scary. They're organizing. They're extremely well organized. They have a lot of power. They are using primal fears, fears of losing your house, fears of losing your income, fears of your family struggling, in order to run their agenda. The NDP needs to build that fire in the next 2-3 weeks, because if not, they are done. They are facing a populist, I'm not calling it conservative,
that's fair,
populist, extreme far-right movement that is hungry and bloodthirsty, and they will not stop. Everybody's tired. It's like I tell to my clients, you're tired, that's fine. Danielle Smith is not. They are not. They're just getting started. She's fresh from a vacation. Just watch it go. And they have coffers bursting to the seam. Here's what we need to remember. Local representation matters. Give your contending MLAs a personality. Give them a voice. Stop muting their assets with the Rachel brand on top. It does not work. Some people might be like, oh yeah, I know Glenda, who lives 5 doors down on my township road. She's running for the NDP, but I see Rachel Notley everywhere. And a lot of people are not even able to hold their nose to vote for a different party than the UCP. So what will those people do? Either stay home or vote for the UCP de facto. Trust your candidates to build a strong brand.
Or train your candidates to build a strong brand. Like if you got people
be there for your candidate, guy. Because from what I'm hearing, it's not support is could be better.
Emergencies Act.
Yeah. Is Theo listening tonight?
Are we going to piss off Theo again?
They're making conspiracy theories about the fucking judge already. Doesn't make any sense.
Well,
I didn't like it or not. Those people.
The vaccines were mind controlling the panel.
Fuck me. Those goobers, and I'm sorry, I'm going to say goobers, and Pierre Poilievre. I'm not going to call him a goober. All those conservatives out there, conservatives, heavy bracket, they wouldn't have, no matter what the outcome would have been, they would have never been happy because it comes from government. We are dealing with individuals who are facing a lot of adversity for any government. Look at what happened against Kenney. They are conservatives, but they didn't go with it. I got an email today from Stop the Lockdown. What lockdown? Peter McCaffrey, you have my number. Call me. I'm tired of getting that shit in my inbox. They subscribe me to all those fucking crazy. No, but
I know where you can find the head office.
I'm gonna call him tomorrow because that shit's gotta stop.
I went and knocked on the little mailbox.
Here, end the lockdown. And they're fundraising on that still. Sierra, on Friday, Justice Paul Rouleau released the Public Order Emergency Commission final report, otherwise known as the inquiry into the government's use of the Emergency Act. We know you don't agree with it, Peter, because, freedom. But here's the thing. A judge, a commissioner, somebody overseeing an inquiry has the duty of remaining neutral, analyzes, and like Judge Rouleau said in his in his explanation, is like, my report is not a judgment. My report is a recollection and an analysis of everything I have heard from everyone for the past 6 months. Don't like it? That's fine. But a lot of people don't like facts. And no matter who the government is, no matter what they do, can we just remember that the conservatives were screaming at the clouds when COVID started to shut down the borders? Can we remember that for a second? And how we were not procuring the vaccine fast enough? And how,
I think some people ran GoFundMe's based on that. I'm not saying that it's a great road to the premier's office, but these are stories I hear based on facts.
I'm insured, but I don't want to use my deductible on that.
Well, no, it's true. Danielle Smith ran a GoFundMe about not being able to get the type of vaccine because of the supply chain, and then she donated the money allegedly to the JCCF.
Where in the world is fundraiser money? But
here's what my question is about the Emergencies Act. We saw the Emergencies Act report come out. We know for a fact that Rick McIver asked the federal government for help. So these are things that happened, and yet we saw Tyler Shandro come out and say like, nah, I don't buy it, guys. We're gonna keep fighting them. Like, is that a waste of taxpayers' money? Yes or no?
They had to, because what's going to happen, they had to do it because what is going to happen next is that report is going to be brought up in parliamentary committee, and they're going to be overlooking at what has the conclusion of the report. Has it been done well? Was it too late? They're going to be talking about a lot of what should we do next, and they're going to be building a preparedness plan based on the outcomes of the commission. So isn't tax of wastepayer money? It's cheaper than $20 billion in our STAR program, is it?
I mean, there's that, but it's still a waste of money.
People were screaming at the gates. Let them have it. They had their little show with their little lawyers.
But why is Shandro doubling down on this? Like, other than the fact that it's politically expedient and it's what their base wants, like Shandro's still technically a lawyer. So why is this a thing?
Because Danielle told him to, just like the gun thing.
That's fair.
Because
sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine. I'm done.
Okay, fair enough. The other things that we talked about tonight, I just want to make sure that we hit everything. Can we talk about the booze? Am I going
The
to get you in trouble
booze?
if I try to talk about the booze?
No. Oh, the signed bottles.
In Devin Dreesen's constituency. Like, why not go with, I don't know, a nice beef jerky basket or something? Like, there's so
Half a
many
cow.
different.
Half a cow. I don't know. Times are hard.
But he goes with um he goes with liquor.
Shields up.
What's in your bottle?
It's diet
Yeah.
ginger ale. I don't drink. Like my husband says, it doesn't make sense for me to go to an all-inclusive because I'm never gonna drink my weight in booze. But that's okay.
That's fair.
No, it's come on, man. It's like, yeah, but we're at the point of political discourse where everything that is signed, like, so here's the thing, where I've never seen that before. That's what's bothering me. Is it creative? Sure. Is it out of the box? Maybe. Is it appropriate? It's questionable. Should have the premier signed those bottles? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I would say that they're not shy of trying to get everything in the box. To use every tool in the box to try to make their point and get the votes. Like Dreesen's not in danger to lose his riding, let's be honest. They just want to reinforce. But I'm curious to see who paid for those bottles. I want to know.
I mean,
and how many were purchased? I have questions.
Valid ones. What are you looking forward to this week? What are we watching this week?
Tomorrow's Family Day.
Tomorrow is Family Day.
It's the week before the budget.
It is. More announcements, I'm guessing, because we had a torrent of small announcements about we're going to put $100,000 here, we're going to put $1 million here. That was what all of last week was.
So I'm going to vent about something I see on social media and I found hilarious. We're in election season. Of course, the government's going to make it rain. The NDP made it in 2019. Everybody does it. There's no purity test here, folks. Everybody does it. So you can get upset as much as you want, but yeah, they'll do it. And the NDP tried it to increase age back in 2019. They tried to, teachers and education, they made all the promises in the world and they were in government. But did the very same people that are seeing problems from the UCP just making it rain had issues with the past government power to make it rain? Guys, we got to make sure that, you can yell at one cloud, but you got to make sure you yell at every single cloud equally. And of course, they're going to try to make it right. Of course, it's all a matter of optics. And what's happening is that we have a communicator running for premier and we have a lawyer running from premier. The communicator got the messaging down. She knows how to address every single crowd in the province. The issue that we have is that Ms. Notley does not seem to be able to. Their strategy team seems a little overwhelmed. And they don't seem like they're able to put their finger on the right messaging. Like, you saw the thread tonight about emergency closures in rural. Jump on that, Rachel. Ask. Hold the government feet to the fire. You need to hold them accountable. Take the lead. Stop making promises with unicorns and rainbows and fluffy poodles. Like, let's get serious to the real stuff here. There's a province's future at stakes. They had that big announcement with Todd Hirsch at the convention. Where is he? I haven't heard anything from him yet. Have you? Or did I miss something? Stop being so goddamn reactive and start leading the way if you want to win. Because if not, it's going to be too late, and it's almost already too late because the budget's coming out next week, and I really, really, really hope that they're going to have so here's what I'm going to say. The way they will be responding to the budget next week will be vital on their path to election. If they fuck that one up, Nate, they're done. Doesn't matter how many packs you have, they're done.
So here's my question then. What do you want to see from a reaction? Because the budget is almost certainly going to be, hey, we've got this crazy surplus. We did so great, oil and gas. It's wondering, la la la. We're going to put more money into healthcare. We're going to put more money into freedom. We're going to pay for freedom or something. I don't know. But it's going to be in that vein. What do you want to see the NDP response look like?
Roll out your goddamn policies in a budget and do a presser. Here's are the issues that we are seeing. Not enough money for EAs right now. We need to increase. There's not enough training for EAs. Okay, we need X amount of space. So training in EMS is what's 6 months, 8 months. Let's make sure we open more spaces in order to have more EMS paving, hitting the pavement next year and a half. Let's increase bridging programs between LPNs and RNs so we can have more RNs. Let's, instead of saying that we're going to be putting a cap on this, and that, fucking cut, use part of the surplus and invest in your future. That's what I would say, because that is the conservative thing to do. It is to invest in your taxpayer base, your future taxpayer base, because the boomers are exiting the market right now. And they're all going to end up in long-term care facilities, and we're going to be even worse off in 10 years. And no one has taken that into account. What's happening with the Heritage Fund? Put at least 40 to 45% in the Heritage Fund. What are you doing for debt repayment? Create a debt repayment account, high interest, put the money in there. When the debt is vesting, it is now time to pay, but you are creating a new stream of revenue with that, that money that you're tucking away in a very high interest account. There are ways to do it. Throwing money and just spewing words and saying they're not looking out for it. I don't know. Come up with a real plan, please, because, the healthcare plan last week, sure, they're going to be just doing some stuff for rural and all that. But guess what? The UCP already announced it, so they're not bringing anything new. They need to come up with new, important items that will matter to the average Albertans. Because right now, what's going to happen is that the UCP is pandering to the extreme far right. They are flirting with, the small C conservatives, and they are keeping, the controversies at bay for now. And meanwhile, there's not a whole lot. So here's what I'm worried about is that right now we can see in pollings, and, we ran some polling and all that. And what I'm saying is that there are starting to be a shift back to the UCP, which is fascinating to see. And, there's some margins that we thought that would be much higher that are not. And that is worrisome. There are some ridings, they should be slam dunks right now. They're not. We should be worried about that. If I was the NDP right now, I'd hire a different pollster and really look at the numbers the way they are, because right now, I think that if the UCP is delivering a good, I know Travis Taves was really focused on the budget. If he's being reasonable about it and they're not pissing it away, it is game over for the NDP. They need to release some. Yeah.
I want to talk for a second about the advertising, because we have this whole fascinating little conversation going on about advertising and who's advertising, who's not. I'm on the NDP, Alberta's NDP Facebook page right now. They are currently running a series of relatively small buy ads on Facebook that are very, very clearly targeted to specific candidates in specific constituencies. And we're talking about quite small numbers, $100 to $200. And the demographics that they're reaching are a couple of thousand So if you live in one of those NDP constituencies that's being micro-targeted, then yes, you might very well be seeing ads. But here's the thing. The Alberta's NDP Facebook page, just for fun and games, has a grand total of 40,000 followers. If we go over to Rachel Notley's Facebook page, just for fun and games, she has I think 43, 125,000. Want to guess how many ads she's running right now?
Zero.
She
went jogging with Joe this morning.
Notley is not running any ads on Facebook through her Facebook page right now. The NDP are running small micro-targeted ads on Facebook. They may have some like other pages. I just took a quick cursory look while you were ranting there because I saw this whole other conversation going on the side, but I was curious. But one of the things that I think is really important that people also be aware of when we're assessing, and this is one of the reasons why with the breakdown, we follow a wide variety of political figures and we engage with a wide variety of political figures because the algorithms will screw you, man. If you are existing in a specific silo, the algorithm's going to want to keep you there because it doesn't want to challenge you. It doesn't want to make you upset. It doesn't want you to leave. So that's a really important piece. Objectivity on social media is something that requires active participation because otherwise it's going to feed you exactly what you want to see. But from a pure numbers based game here, the reality is, and anybody can do this, anybody can go to any given Facebook page. A lot of people don't know this, but this is where like a lot of the stuff that we do here at the breakdown, it's our bread and butter. It's one of the first things that we check. You can go to any Facebook page, and if you click on the about info, you can go to the page transparency piece, and on that you can see all of the ads that a page is currently running. You can see how much they're spending, and you can see how big the target audience is, which gives you a very good idea of what sort of demographics they're playing with geographically, as well as age and all of that sort of thing. But you can also see all of their past ads. And that also tells you what kind of advertising they're doing on Facebook. And when you take a look at how people are largely interacting, the vast majority of the reactionary politics that happens doesn't happen on Twitter. People who are engaged in politics on Twitter are the hyper engaged. People who are on Facebook, that's a whole other shit show. And if you take a look at the following for groups like Take Back Alberta or groups like Holding MLAs Accountable, if you compare their social media footprint on places like Twitter to places like Facebook, night and day difference. So it's really important to realize that. But we got one other question that I want to get into real quick.
Can I just add something? You also need to make your space in the traditional media because people still watch news, and that's another story.
That's fair. So I just want to quickly address one other comment that's going on in our comments tonight because it's a thing. And I'm gonna read you the textbook definition. Then I want to get your definition because people are asking about populism. Now, my understanding, before I cheat and use the dictionary over here, is that populism is not an ideology; it's a tool. So you can be conservative and not use populism. You can be progressive and not use populism. When you are using populism, that's a tool. It's not an ideology. And so the dictionary definition, I've had too much sugar tonight. I had some wonderful birthday cake earlier. Not my birthday.
Can I go with my definition first before you go with the dictionary?
Go right ahead.
So very often, so populism can be used by anyone, right? The left, the right. So it is very specific group. Let's say here we're dealing with small C conservatives, big C conservatives, old reforms, wild rosers, WIPA, and all that, and Take Back Alberta. They are using it as a tool to convey some political messages that are catering to that very specific crowd of individuals that feel they're not being heard. In this case, especially, they are using populism towards the anti-COVID crowd. Take our freedom back, take our rights back, let's take our government back. From what? It is a tool that they are using to convey a messaging and an ideology that is being developed by political leaders. That's my personal own definition of populism.
Yeah, you're pretty much bang on. The dictionary definition from Oxford is a political approach that strives to appeal to ordinary people, feel their concerns are disregarded by the established elite groups. So that's what it is. It's when you're appealing to people who don't want to listen to experts. Yeah. And Danielle Smith has embodied that when she said, I'm not going to listen to the experts anymore. So that's what populism is. But something, and I've seen conversations within progressives where progressives have said, hey, we need to be more populist. And a lot of people mix populist with sort of grassroots. And you can have grassroots and you can have grassroots populism. But one of the characteristics of dangerous populism is whether or not the leader of that group is willing to say, whoa, that's a bit too far.
So I'm going to give an example. France always love a good protest. Boy, do they love their protest. The left in France are using a very populist messaging. There's different flavors of populism, but when populism is conveyed by hate, intolerance, miseducation, misinformation, and trying to convey and direct targeting a very specific populations and voters in order to further their personal agenda, that's what bad populism is. Let's say in France, recently they had because they want to save their pensions, but they are populist, but on the left, but they had one very specific purpose, and they are engaged, and they are trying to get individuals engaged. And again, it's what you make out of it. Look at Marie Antoinette and Louis XIV. Look at what happened. The revolution was led by populism. It was the ordinary people that had enough, really had enough. Let them eat cake, they said. And they came at the gates and they had enough. It's almost like if I know what I'm talking about.
But that's the whole piece. So one of the questions is then, if the NDP were to access some level of populism, what would that look like to you? It's tough.
I genuinely don't think they can achieve that. But here's what I'm going to say. They can create a movement with explaining that every consequence in voting matters. Every consequences, every action, every vote matter. They can create a movement into, look, guys, this is what we are facing. Genuinely, we're not going to go fearmonger. But, after the budget, you look at the budget, you break it down. Shit, I'm going to have to start sending them invoices. But you break it down, you're like, okay, guys, if we are seeing this is the way we are heading as a province. But here's our solution. Here's how we would do it. Bring a goddamn solution to the table and stop whining like I'm 10 years old.
Well, here's the other question, because here's one of the barriers that I think the NDP is experiencing. I want you to tell me what you think here. But going through all of the recent NDP tweets, social media stuffs, it seems like one of the big things that they're doing is they're saying, hey, people deserve healthcare, visit our website. And as I ranted about just a couple of episodes ago, as soon as you put an external link on any social media platform, that pushes you way down the algorithm. So it's just a bad idea. Put a graphic up that has the link, or say link in bio or whatever. or
Or
tag
say
an
this is
account.
what we are going to do. Why is
You could
it
do
so
that too.
goddamn hard for the leader? Or put some MLAs out there and be like, okay, here's the problem we're facing, but this is what we want to bring to the table. This is what we will do. This is how much it will cost. This is how much it will impact you. And we are here for everyone, not just our tiny little group of 44,000 members that voted for the premier on the 6th round.
But the other question is, it if you say to someone like me, hey, we've got this website. It's got our policies. Great website. You should check it out. Then for me to not look like an idiot when I'm speaking, one of the things that I'm going to do is go and check out this website, which, by the way, is not nearly as detailed as they make it out to be.
No,
The
it's
other
not.
thing is if you say that to the average Albertan who's dealing with the affordability crisis, who's dealing with all of the things that people are dealing with, if you're doing all of those things and somebody says, hey, I want you to buy in, come over to this website, spend some time, you're creating all kinds of barriers to entry that aren't going to work. Am I wrong?
It's ableist because very often the language is going to be extremely complicated. And let's remember that there's a lot of individuals in the province. And yes, I'm going to use ableism right now because there's a lot of individuals right now that, they don't have university reading level, or they have maybe a grade 9 reading level skill. Videos are what works best because let's not forget there's a lot of population, a lot of families, Hindu, and there's a lot of immigrant families that some of the grandparents, we forget they vote, but we also forget that they do not know how to read English. And a video works for them when it is explained clearly. And they are missing the mark on that too. It's like everybody's bitching about the Laurentian elites. I think that the NDP is their worst enemy right now. Like,
So I got two other things I want to hit on because
yeah.
we're coming up to our hour and a half here. But the two other things that I want to hit on, first of all, I got this sent in the DMs while we were chatting here. You want to know what conversion marketing looks like? It looks like this. Because if you search the breakdown AB on YouTube right now, you get hit with an opinion poll from the Epoch Times from Danielle Smith. Well, it's not from Danielle Smith, but you get hit with this ad. It's got Danielle Smith. She's talking about introducing a Firearms Act in response to federal gun control legislation. This is what effective marketing looks like because anybody who searches the breakdown, people know that's political. And so before you get to see the results of your search, what you're getting is you're getting this ad that says, hey, but what about, I mean, don't even get me started on the Epoch Times, but they're very bad, but they're paying for marketing. And this is another piece that's really realized is that a lot of people looked at Danielle Smith's fundraising numbers that came out this week and they said, where's the big names? The big names aren't donating to Danielle Smith. They're donating to the PACs. They're supporting financially these media organizations so that these media organizations, some of whom I'm told are registered charities, no less, these media organizations can then boost the signal for them. That's the whole new game. So there's that. And the one other thing that I wanted to do a little bit of a teaser on, let's say, there's an announcement this week that we haven't touched on yet. And it's kind of a big deal because it's the second leadership candidate who is saying, so long, thanks for all the fish. I'm out. So Rajan Sani announced this week via social media that not going to be running in the next election. Now, this turns into a rabbit hole real quick.
Oh,
because
And I can go down the rabbit hole for an hour if you want me to.
But here's the thing. I mean,
They
like
are
her,
willingly pushing out all the moderates. Sorry.
well, yes, like her or not, Rajan was one of the moderates in the UCP. Now, I come from a bit of a bias in a couple of different places because anybody who's been paying any attention to my background knows that I ran in 2019. Guess who I ran against? Rajan. And I got all kinds of video from that campaign that I occasionally re-up because I get angry from time to time. But one thing that I will say is that Rajan demonstrated herself while she was in office to be a moderate within the Kenney government. And for people who maybe had a little bit of the inside track on things, they know that Kenney and his favorite little pet wolf were more than prepared to not only de-index age, they were going to do cuts.
Yeah.
And it was Rajan's portfolio, and a lot of people said, "Oh, it's all Rajan's fault." But the inside story, the inside rumor that I imagine I'll never confirm publicly because that's just not how she rolls, is that, and I've heard this from multiple people who are in the room. So this is not like, I'm speculating.
Let me see if we heard the same thing.
Rajan laid it all on the line when Kenney said he wanted to cut Aish, and you do, I'm out. And that saved people on Aish from not only CD indexing, which was for sure. And Lord knows, if you've paid any attention to the back catalog of the show, we've talked about Aish a lot on the show. And what we're doing right now is less than the bare minimum. Let's be clear. It's embarrassing how much we're contributing and we're supporting people through Aish, and it's not cost effective. So
there was another MLA or two that were towing the line with Rajan and saying enough is enough. There was a lot of pushback in the background, and people don't know that because those are not feel-good stories. Those are not stories that people will, Kenney wouldn't have gone and be like, oh yeah, if Rajan and this MLA and this minister and all that would have never pushed back, I would have cut it. Nobody's going to brag about that. We don't hear those stories. We don't hear
what's going on. Well, you can't talk about that. You can't say publicly, I disagreed with the premier, and I told him that if he did do this very bad thing, that I was going to quit, because that turns into a whole media circus in and of itself. Nobody ever gets to talk about those things. But I do think within the context of the UCP that we are seeing the expulsion of the moderates.
Every person.
And the people who are going to replace them, if you're looking, I live in Rajan's constituency, and when I look at who's lining up for the UCP nominations, Jesus Christ on a cracker, it gets real scary real quick.
It's not a happy day.
I see what you did there. But the point that I'm making is even inside an organization like the UCP, there were people who I believe, based on my inside information, who were trying to do the best they could under difficult circumstances. Now, you can go the moral argument of, well, then they should have left. And if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. But we're about to see, I suspect, what a UCP/Wild Rose 2.0 government looks like. Moderates have left the room. So, she got the high school book for my constituency, and I appreciate that a whole lot.
She did a lot of work.
She did.
So I'm seeing a comment here, and it says rumor is that the UCP is going to be good to Aish with the next budget. Yes, and my suspicion is that our proposal of increasing it to $2,000 a month for an extra $265 million a year will be on the table because I was asked for some details.
There you go. So, but again, there's a fundamental problem that I think needs to be highlighted there, is that it's incredibly exploitive to only show up for the most vulnerable when it's profitable or beneficial for you.
But every single political party does it, though. That's what's killing me. They're like, oh yeah, we're here for everybody. No, you're not. You're MIA 90% of the time. You're just showing up when it's going to get you votes. Like, please, on both sides.
I also want to take a quick second because I see that it's already going on in the comments. No.
Yes, yes. I need to call your
even
wife.
with Rajan stepping down, there's no way. I'm not running. I'm not.
The strategy's ready,
Period.
Nate. Do you want to stop by my office on Wednesday?
Hard no. I mean, I'll stop by the office. It looks the pictures look nice, but I'm not running even with Rajan. I've been getting messages from people. No. Never again.
Yes.
Nope.
Yes.
Hard no. Total no.
No.
Anyways.
Tell Mick to call me.
You know, I yeah. We're so screwed in my constituency. We're so screwed in my constituency. I'm so sorry.
My constituency is not better. Well, no, actually, there's a good candidate. Like Najwan for the NDP is a really, really good candidate. We gotta give her that. I wish we would see more of Najwan, less of Rachel. That's the complaint that I have as a voter in Calgary, Glenmore. Oh no, I said the riding I live in.
They're gonna come find you.
I think they already know where I live, trust me. But yeah, we're so fucked. We're so fucked.
I'm not loving it.
It's not even funny, but that's okay.
Budget, Aish, anything else you're looking out for?
I think that this week they're going to be making more announcements on education because it is convention weeks. I think they're going to be making more announcements on that side. We're going to see Take Back Alberta going on 100th year to try to get everything wrapped up. The UCP, on the 23rd, to whomever is a member of UCP and lives in Calgary, Fish Creek, please go vote for my friend Christina Steed. She is amazing. She's a good fiscal consultant. She's a progressive. She was Richard Godfrey's constituency assistant for years. And I've known Christina since 2016, 2017. And she is a good, smart, she volunteers a lot. She is genuinely an amazing person. So and I know Take Back Alberta is trying to dip their nose in there. So if you have the chance to vote for the next nomination in Calgary Fish Creek, please consider throwing your support behind Christina because we're just going to be a whole lot better for it. Trust me. I don't care about party lines anymore. I just care about good people. That's where I'm at.
I think
Let's get some good people elected.
You know, if people were more engaged and we just demanded good people across the board, as opposed to, hey, I hear you're a fan of the NRA, I think that we would probably be doing a whole lot better on all sides.
Andrew's just going wild.
The answer is no, Andrew. The answer is no.
I don't know. Listen to that one. Are the candidates in your riding hard to like? Vote Pike. I'm getting a t-shirt.
Making fun of grade 4 level communications. I'm not doing that. I'm gonna wrap it up.
Okay.
We're 10 minutes over. We'll be back on Wednesday. Thank you, everybody, for being patient with our departure on Wednesday this week. Sarah was super busy.
Yeah, sorry. I was in Canmore. I was tired. I had a 12-hour day.
I needed a break, too.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. But we won't let you down this week.
We won't. And we talk about self-care on the show, and we talk about the importance of making sure that you're taking time for self-care. So, you know, us occasionally taking a little bit of time for self-care, I think that's a good thing.
We have jobs outside of that as well, and families. And my baby's growing way too fast right now. And she went from saying 3-word sentences to 4-word sentences, and she's now attending gym classes. And she's like a tiny little Hulk, and I feel like I'm missing out too much. So there's a balance. Off to you, Nate.
I just got even with this little slogan here from Birdie X. This is fantastic. I'm going to throw another caption up instead because this is the part where I clear out the room. So I want to say a big thank you to everybody who's been listening on the Twitter Spaces, everybody who's listening on the and watching on the YouTubes, especially the super spicy chat section. It is wonderful to see how much the chat has grown and how interactive it is. Absolutely love seeing it. Thank you guys so much for sharing your time, sharing your thoughts. And there's nothing wrong with a little bit of healthy debate. So thank you everybody who weighed in there. As always, if you appreciate the kind of content that we're trying to produce here at The Breakdown, we'd love nothing more than if you signed up to our Patreon sponsors at www.patreon.com/thebreakdownab, where for the price of just a fancy little cup of coffee a month, you can help us continue to do the kind of stuff that you do. And you get stickers. I got a wonderful DM from somebody this week who sent a picture of the sticker that they received. So that was super nice. So you get stuff, plus you get the good feeling that comes with knowing that you're supporting the kind of work that we're trying to do. And you can say, hey, you know what? Hey, Daniel, at AB Daniel Smith, I support the breakdown. So there. Pick your favorite politician, makes them crazy. But you can do all of that at www.patreon.com/thebreakdownab. If you're listening to the audio version of our podcast, thanks for listening. If you want to leave a rating, a review, say some nice words, that would be delightful. And we will see everybody here back on Wednesday at a regular time, 8 o'clock. Until then, take care of yourselves. Keep the conversation going.